Okay, so I am really excited to be sitting down with a new recent friend of mine, and that is the incredibly talented and just always relevant monster career Joanna Cassidy.
I like the monster career. I like that.
I remember the first time I heard your voice was when I had written that letter to the members last year, and I got a voicemail from you. And I remember it was something where you weren't happy with me for something. And then I think you read it, and then you called back and you're like, actually, now that I've read your thing, I actually want to talk to you. And we ended up having some wonderful conversations. And then now over the last few weeks, we've gotten a chance to spend more time together. I think it started with you hosting a meeting at your house where I first got a chance.
Yes.
And then just through the work we've been doing in union leadership over the last few months and weeks here during the crisis. So I want you to know it is an absolute honor to have you here. It's so fun to have you in my life and to be meeting you. Again, it's part of my own journey of starting to connect with people I idolized and grew up watching on film and television. So it's just weird the journey that life takes you on.
I understand. Believe me, I do understand.
Well, first things first. How are you with all of this craziness going on with the industry, with also just coronavirus? Like, how are you? How are your loved ones?
My loved ones are good, and I'm good. I've survived this thing. I don't think I really latched on to it except for a couple days, and it would sort of pierce my my brain with the reality of it. And now it's just really starting to, because we have to come back to this now. It's going to be a whole other thing. I can't imagine that it's going to take us twice the time now to do a show. That's hard to believe, that they're going to cut the hours down to 10 hours instead of 14 hours, which in many ways makes sense because a 14-hour day is tough.
Mm-hmm. Especially when you have to do so much additional cleaning and protection methods and all that. Well, and that's going to get into, I know some of our, SAG-AFTRA members are, interested in what you are aware of or what you can share about any conversations in and around what our strategy or our guidelines are going to be, like new safety guidelines, things like that. Let's quickly just let people know that in addition to your extensive career in film and television, you've also been involved in union leadership for how long? When did you first get started?
I guess it was before 2000, maybe around 2000. Mm-hmm. That's a long time.
Yeah, a couple decades of perspective with your participation. And now, apart from being, the only higher office that you can hold would be president of the union, because you're on the executive committee, you're on the national board, you're on the LA local board. So you're involved in all three levels of governance of our union. So that's amazing. And you have access to information that, most of our members don't have access to. And I know there's only so much that you can share because a lot of what you are told has to be kept confidential, which in some times I'm sure makes sense, and other times I know you've said it doesn't make sense, that some things are.
I do feel that way about it. I think confidentiality is an overused word, and sometimes it's just not appropriate. If we're going to be a union and all part of each other's life, which it seems like we have to be. Because honestly, I guess this is the first time it's sort of circling around to where I am. It does feel like more of a joint conglomerate than it ever did, and maybe because there is the virus, I'm not sure, but it's making people speak up, be more open. We took it for granted, is what we did.
The union?
The union. Mm-hmm. We knew it was in there in the background somewhere, and that it would eventually pay our pensions, takes care of our health. I don't think I really ever acknowledged it. Well, I have, but I mean, not to the extent that I'm having to acknowledge it now and hopefully change it.
Mm-hmm. Which is incredible because, you've even been one of the more engaged members being involved in leadership over these last couple of decades. I mean, there's the vast majority of our members that the union is an afterthought. It's just something they paid a bunch of money to join, and they still pay a couple $100 or more a year to be a part of it. And that's where it ends. There's literally no other interaction. There's no other thought or care or concern. Maybe they vote, but only 17% of our members actually voted in the last.
I know. That's very sad to me. I don't, and since we've been having all these get-togethers on Saturday, I'm trying to figure out where that went. How come that happened? Part of me says that even though I'm on these boards and on the executive committee, I feel like a lot of times I don't have a vote. It's we're a little shut down.
Mm-hmm. When you say we, who is the we that is shut down?
I think, I know our group Membership First is shut down a lot. We have Patricia Richardson in there, who's the president of the local board. And she's frustrated with how things are going. She's in a place that's she's feeling unfairly dealt with. We needed space for her to, operate, and we had trouble getting that. You see, there's all this information out there that we're just starting to get now, and I'm glad that we have Patricia in there because she's great, and she doesn't hold back. So we get to hear everything that's really going on. I think that the union, when it started, I'm trying to think of the dancing couple that she was part of it, Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers. She would dance until her feet bled. For 20 hours a day. Well, they'd hand the kids then pills, make them get up and go to sleep. And they'd put them on a set and just make them go to it. And that's what they did. They just went to it. Of course, and the drugs were accelerating everything. But, and she was getting paid bupkis compared to her partner. It was really quite ridiculous. And when you look at these period films, they point that out sometimes, but it really wasn't noted that much. Anyway, Ginger Rogers fought for equality. She never got it, but she did get a better paycheck. And she was one of the first people. And I think what happens with a union is, just like we were saying before, you sit back and you go, well, it's there. But I don't know why the details don't come out to us. I don't understand that. Somehow from there to there, there's a lot getting lost by the time it gets in the papers.
One of the things that's astonishing in talking to you because of your involvement is there's an assumption that members can make. And I would have made the same assumption, but since I've been involved now for the last, 3 years in leadership and 4 years as a volunteer, I understand how things work now more than the average member does. But the idea that someone could be on the executive committee, right, which is the 38 member, but really only 24 voting member body that was given the power recently from the national board to conduct its business on its behalf, let alone the local boards who are completely shut down right now from operating, that you wouldn't have access to information, that things are kept from you, that you don't feel like you have a voice or that you don't have a vote on what's happening in the union. If you don't have a voice and a vote in what's happening with our union, in your position, who has the voice? Who is making the decisions?
I have, and it's funny, it probably goes back to when I was a little girl, but I have a very hard time with people who behave in an authoritative way and give me that face, that awful face that is like a scowl. I have to go into this, psychological part of it because it is all part of it. To me, we should be sitting around like a bunch of Indians, around a circle, and all speaking and all very respectful, passing the pipe, so to speak, and listening to one another. There's not a lot of listening that goes on here. And that's a huge problem because maybe it's heard, but it's not really listened to, because I watch every time we say something, it's kind of like a, okay, now we're going to do this. that's not a group. That's not the group that we were brought in to be. I was voted in here. First of all, I was brought in because a few people wanted a celebrity here, and that's fine. That's absolutely fine. People know who I am, and they will vote for me. But now I'm in. And that's been that way over the years. And so I have a voice. Maybe a very soft one, but I have one too. And I have to say, in all the years, I have not felt listened to. So I can remember bringing my checks from 6 Feet Under, and Bob Pisano was in power then. And my checks would come in like 68 cents, $1.55. And I said, we have to do better negotiating. This is ridiculous. I can't live on this. I can't take care of 2 children in a house. I'm not married. I don't have a partner. I can't do this. And, got a bad deal. It's been a tough journey for me because being, a young girl who came to this town, really, it was not what I wanted to do, but it was something I could do, acting. I sort of found out as time went along. And then to have people, be in very tough positions, it's scary. And be female. The female in this business is not an easy thing either. It really, really isn't. I mean, we could talk about that for hours, but... Well,
let's back up for 1 second, because there's so many things you just said that I think are worthy of discussing. But just before we get really deep into the union stuff, just to hear more about your own story. So you grew up on the East Coast, right?
I did, yeah.
You were from...
New Jersey.
Yeah. And you went to school at where?
I went to Syracuse University to study fine art. Mm-hmm. And I was very good at it, but...
What does that mean, fine art? Like, did you paint?
I painted, yes, painted, did drawings. So it was paint or pencil and pastel.
Do you still do it?
Well, I do it with my houses, not houses, but, if I buy a house, I fix it up. I do the garden. So it's like a painting. Uh-huh. And then I move on from that and do something else. It should have been my business, really. I'm very good at that. So... but anyway, so I didn't know what I wanted to do, even as a kid. I just knew one thing. I wanted to have fun in this lifetime. That's what I knew.
Where did that come from? Where did that feeling that you wanted to have fun? Did you not have fun when you were younger?
I always had fun. I mean, that was probably the problem. I always had fun. I mean, I was on... Zoom this morning with a bunch of high school friends. I won't tell you what class it was, but anyway. And one girl said, I have to tell you a story, Joanna. We were down in your basement, and you decided to become Elvis Presley, and you did Ain't Nothing But a Hound Dog, and you were Elvis Presley. So... I was like 7 or something like that. Anyway, I was on a roll. And...
Well, how'd you end up on the West Coast?
Okay, well, at the end of my freshman year, I got married.
Freshman year?
Freshman year, yes. I didn't finish school.
Wow.
And he had accepted an internship in San Francisco. So we drove across country, got married, drove across country. It's more involved than that. It's kind of an interesting story. But, and I was a little housewife. He was, going to the hospital, Mount Zion Hospital, every day. And a lot of my life was taken up there. We were very poor. I can remember cutting up chicken necks for our dinner, so we could have a chicken salad. Mm-hmm. Well, it's pretty sad. I had one pair of shoes a year. And I never forgot that. I think I became a little bit of an Imelda Marcos character after a while. Loved my shoes. But anyway, yeah, that's what we did.
And somewhere in and around there, you got into modeling.
Yes. There was a woman who had an agency there called Ann Brebner in San Francisco, and I just wanted to have fun. I had a child, and we used to drive around in this great big DeSoto, 1954 DeSoto. And we'd go places. We'd go to Golden Gate Park and sit in the Japanese tea center, you know, and drink tea. And I just thought, well, this is nice, but maybe it's not enough. So I got involved with this modeling thing, and it wasn't a big deal, but it was a little pocket change. And I thought, and I was very nervous at the time getting in front of a camera, but it became easier. And then Mike Nichols, geez. Elaine May and Mike Nichols. He came up to San Francisco or over, I guess, from New York, and was casting a movie. And Ann Brebner was, doing some of the extras. But they were looking for the Candice Bergen part. They hadn't cast her yet. So I met him, and I met a woman by the name of Joyce Selznick, who was a big casting person. And she said, you should come to L.A. sometime. I said, nah, I don't think so. And, there was theater there in San Francisco, too. I mean, and it had lots of people. There's a comedy group there. I never thought about it. It was the last thing on my mind. I really never thought about it. So that sort of was like just a little bee in my mind. And well, that's interesting. Then, time went on and the modeling thing was getting fun. We broke up. And by then I had 2 children. And I drove my kids to Los Angeles. I had done a modeling job with a friend of mine. She just hired me from a photograph. And I called her up and I said, we're heading down there.
How did you get the courage to not only, go on your own, but move cities?
I don't know where that came from. I honestly... And that'll
with
be in
kids.
with kids. I know. That'll be in my book someday if I ever write it. It was a huge move, huge. I didn't know anyone except this one person who had hired me for a job, and so I came there with the kids and had to find a house, which I did in the Valley, and then I had to find a job. So I went to an modeling agency there. A couple of them. She said, the one woman said, absolutely not. You're not from New York. You don't have a book. So I just kept coming back until I drove her insane. And she finally said, all right, I'll take you on. You can be a client, for God's sakes. Leave me alone.
Who is that?
Oh, what was her name? She was very big. She was right on the corner of Highland and Hollywood.
Uh-huh. Do you remember the modeling agency name?
I'm trying to remember. It'll pop up. It'll pop up. Anyway.
Well, there you go. Persistence breaks resistance.
Yeah,
right?
Doesn't it? It really does. Anyway, so, one guy at the agency said, hey, this casting person named Joyce Selznick is casting a movie. I said, oh, I think I'll call her up. Because you could do that in those days. You could go to the Yellow Pages and call somebody up or get a phone number from information. So I did, and I said, let's sit down and talk. She said, oh, all right, come on over. So I did. And she hired me she gave me a script. She threw a script at me and said, here, read these lines. And I did, and it was The Laughing Policeman with Walter Matthau and Bruce Dern. And Bruce took me on, and he was so kind to me. He really showed me the ropes. I had no idea what I was doing. Not a clue. No theater experience, nothing. Nothing. So it was me, and there was me from New Jersey, and then there was this other me. And after a while, I, developed an ego about this whole thing. And
what do you mean by that? Developed an ego?
I believed my press. That's what it means to me. Mm-hmm. People started touting me as the new Marilyn Monroe, blah, blah, blah. And Joyce was pushing me, but then she managed me. And I guess there was a part of me that just went, I can't handle this. A little too much for me, because I just wanted to have fun. Mm-hmm. Go back to that again.
What did that mean? What kind of fun?
Meeting all the people that were going to the parties, mm-hmm. Having an experience. I mean, my God, I would go over to Robert Evans' house, for example, and sit around and meet fabulous people. Mm-hmm. And it was weird. It was weird, but fun.
Who's Robert Evans?
Robert Evans is a huge producer.
Okay.
Huge. It's just... Put him up. Oh. Wait a second. We can pull it. Huge.
I can look him up. Yeah, so tell me more. Yeah.
Anyway, oh, God. And then he married Ally McGraw, and...
he produced a little movie called Chinatown.
Yeah, a little movie. Mm-hmm.
And The Godfather Part 2. And all kinds of the two Jakes.
So, and then I was dating the vice president of MGM. It was fascinating to me. It was absolutely eye-opening.
What a change from the Japanese tea center.
Well, yeah, and the little girl from New Jersey. I mean, I would just... when I would dress, I was given beautiful clothes, and I was seeing all these, great guys, and it was too much for me. So I would be going down this road. I'd take a left. And then I'd sort of stumble back to the main road again and go down the highway some more. And then fall off to the right. I mean, I fell off a lot.
What does that mean?
Saying the wrong thing to somebody. I can't tell you where my mouth has taken me. Mm-hmm. From somewhere, I go, what the hell was that? What did you just say? You just blew a job. I mean, and I'm still doing it. It's the wildest thing. I will say the most outrageous things, and I just go, holy shit, I can't believe I said that. But I did.
Is that kind of some kind of self-sabotage, unconscious
I think so.
thing?
Well, that's what I mean. Absolutely. Uh-huh. Of course it is.
It's like, this is too much for me. Say something dumb right now.
Right. Right. I've done it. I did it with Steven Spielberg. I did it with Bob Zemeckis. I mean, just stuff, and I'm just going, I know what that is. I'm just a scared little girl from New Jersey who just, it's too much. Too much.
Why? Why is it too much? Because some people revel in that, right?
I know they do.
Yeah.
I know they revel in it.
Is it because some kind of like imposter syndrome or something?
Probably.
Because you said something the other night where you felt like, because let's be clear. You've been, you've won a Golden Globe. You've been nominated for Emmys and SAG Awards and all that. And yet you still said the other day that acting didn't come naturally to you.
I know.
It's like, well, what other evidence do you need that you know what you're doing?
It's my own perception.
Yeah.
You can't sit. When I was a little girl, my favorite time with my dad was going around collecting butterflies and moths. We would go out at night and we would build a tent and have lights on stands all around, and we would make up a mixture of beer and honey and sugar and the jalopy, and it would pull in all these moths. And it was incredible. I watched things go through the cycle, laying an egg and being a caterpillar, and we had a screened-in porch, and I would have food on the porch, and when the females emerged, it would draw males from God knows where. I mean, I don't know where, but they came from miles away. It blew my mind to see all that. I'm very comfortable on that level. It was either I was either going to go to school for art, study fine art, or I was going to become a scientist. So there you go, and work for the National Geographic.
Mm. So was like staying involved in the modeling stuff when you came down here and getting into acting, was it just as a way to provide for your family and something that was low-hanging fruit?
Yeah, it was. I was beautiful. I'm flat out beautiful. I was. And it was easy. Those times, beauty was everything. You know, it morphed from being, you know, the early turn of the century and coming through all that stuff. And then by the time I got to LA in the 70s, it was no longer in that gorgeous movie star being supported by the studios thing. It was something else. You were on your own. Mm-hmm. And I was on my own. I mean, I literally, I was on my own. I had 2 children that I had to take care of. Mm-hmm. And so whatever, you know, I used what I had. And at the time, you know, I didn't have a degree, so I don't know what I would have done with that degree anyway, if I, you know, an art degree. Mm-hmm. I don't know whether I would have gone on to New York and worked in a, you know, an advertising agency or what. I don't know what I would have done with it. Mm-hmm. So it didn't matter to me whether I finished it or not. I did sculptures that, you know, I was working with a burner thing, and I was sculpting paper mache and all kinds of crap and hanging it 3 stories down. I did wild stuff, and that I loved. Mm-hmm. It was intensely mine. It was something that came out of my mind. And I'll track that to what makes me uncomfortable sometimes. What makes me uncomfortable is saying words I'm not comfortable with. It doesn't make sense to me. It's not smart enough. You know, I've been around a lot of people. I know what's smart. I've seen a lot of things. I know what really floats my boat. Mm-hmm. And, but boy, I have been in some wild shows. I mean, I've been in some really smart shows. 6 Feet Under was brilliant. Mm-hmm. I mean, to be in Blade Runner with Ridley Scott was just out of this world. Yeah. And I was already 36. I think I was 36, yeah.
Well, you were a part of, you know, films that were kind of defining moments in our culture. And I would say Blade Runner's definitely one of them, but so was Who Framed Roger Rabbit, mm-hmm. you know, blending mm-hmm. animation and live action like it did, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And I worked with Gene Hackman twice, and that was later on in his career, and he was, you know, getting towards the end. I would have worked with him more if I hadn't fallen off the path. Mm. I was dating somebody that was just not a good person. Mm-hmm. And should have kept me on track, but rather pulled me off to their thinking.
Well, okay,
you know?
So I think, you know, there are going to be women that, you know, younger women or women in the industry, period, that are going to be interested in mm-hmm. your advice on that. Do you have any advice for?
I sure do. Just, it's so easy to get drawn in and pulled in by people that, and usually it's the opposite sex, not always, but who have agendas, who want you for your physicality and not your mind. They can be captivated by your mind, but they want you. And I was wanted a lot. And there were a lot of times when I thought, well, you know, maybe that's what I have to do to get a job.
Well, that was the first thought. It wasn't romance. It wasn't that. It was the, you know, like the pressure of
huge pressure
responding because of your needs as a performer.
Well, yeah,
and a
it's
mother.
It's your needs of being a performer plus your needs of just part of the belonging. I don't know. That's a whole other subject. But
you mean belonging is in if you don't engage, you won't be invited to be part of.
Yeah, it's kind of that. Yeah, or you have to be brave enough. It's like joining a fraternity. Mm-hmm. You have to do something to join. You have to go through the gauntlet, so to speak. And I'm not talking about being passed around, but that does happen sometimes. It didn't happen to me, but that's the thing I worry about with young women who come to this town. They're passed around, and that's called being used. A lot of kids aren't going to make it. Some kids will. That's their life. They're choosing it. That's, entirely up to them. But there are pitfalls, as there are in any job. It's not just our business.
Do you think this recent, Me Too movement has affected that in any way, or do you think it's...
Well, yeah, it has. I mean, let's face it, it really has. And in some ways, I was so funny. I swear to God, thank God I have this laugh and this sense of humor that I have, because I laughed myself my way through Hollywood. I really did. If somebody was coming on to me, I just laughed at them. It was ridiculous. There was one guy one time, a big producer, who my manager sent me over to meet. I can't remember his name. It's really frustrating. But anyway, he thought he was a hypnotist. So it was in the Valley, and he had a brother in the business too. I will think of this name someday. It's funny. So I'm sitting there. He said, go sit over there, and I'm going to wave this watch in front of you, and you, when I say a certain word, you're going to go out.
Sounds safe.
Sounds safe. And then when you wake up, you're going to come over and sit in my lap and kiss me.
Wow. First meeting?
First meeting.
Okay.
So I said, okay, this sounds like fun, So I got revved up, and I thought, well, this will be just fun, So I sat there, and he's waving his watch, and for a fairly long time, about 10 minutes or something. I'm just going, okay, I'm going to pretend. I'm going to act this one out. So I'm sitting there, and I'm acting like I'm gone, right? And he says the magic word. And at that point, I was supposed to get up and go sit in his lap. Well, I did. I got up, and I went over, and I sat in his lap, and I slapped him so hard. I ran out the door. So now I don't know whether you call that one of those moments that's, was a self-destruct moment, or whether it was just plain just get out of the door safely, But a lot of things like that happened to me.
Were you scared in that moment?
No, not at all. I wasn't scared of him. But there were a lot of guys I was scared of. A lot. They scared the bejesus out of me.
In what way? Physically, or just with the power they had?
No, they were just the power. It was the power, and I didn't feel equal. So that's the thing that I've learned going along, is that I've just found myself settling in my equality. Am I as smart as Obama's wife? No, she's had much more training than I have, but I can sit with her and talk.
Do you think that power dynamic is even reasonable, that should be mitigated? I mean, there's always going to be decision makers who have say over whether somebody has an opportunity or not, and we're still human beings and have primal urges and all. I mean, do you think it's reasonable to think we can ever eliminate that kind of use or abuse?
No, it'll never be eliminated, and that's just the way it's built.
Yeah.
A boss has to be a boss. If he's slimy, then he's going to be slimy. But if he's a good guy, great. You can have a boss.
Yeah.
We need bosses. So to finish that story, I really laughed my way all the way through it. That's what saved me. It kept me sane, and I went home to my children every night. So
I had a conversation with a friend of mine whose father is a performer that who's a very successful performer, and her family was part of one of the biggest franchises in movie history, and she mentioned they would spend nights in the hotel, just in the bathtub and the bathroom, just holding each other and reminding ourselves, this is real. This is real. The family, this is real. What's out there, that's not real. This is what's real. And that was really moving to me, because getting caught up in all these big names and spaces and the pressures. I mean, that's what I think of when you say it was too much. That whole dance.
Yeah, it's a dance. That is definitely a dance. You got to be prepared for that. And if you jump that fence and you can be in that, great. You got to really believe in yourself. You have to believe that you can go on a set and command 50 people that are staring at you and say your lines, say them professionally, and get it out and be happy with yourself. I know I did a job a few years ago that I would go on the set and I was so self-conscious, it killed me. I never felt like I nailed the performance, even though I did. I mean, I made people laugh and they loved it. They loved it. Never felt I did it. Then I would go on the set and I would cringe. And it's funny, you know, it depends a lot on the chemistry of the people on the set, too. There's some, Gene Hackman, I felt totally comfortable with him. He was always, because I could count on him. You know.
What does that mean, that you could count on him?
Well, that's an interesting question. That opens up a whole kettle of worms. When I do off camera, you know I'm going to be there. I am there for you. I'm not anywhere else but right across from you, giving you everything and more that I gave on my own close-up. Gene was the same way. We'd be in a scene together. He had it so down. It was so real. You could just step into that dimension with him. And when I remember he said something to me that was so interesting when we were doing Under Fire with Nick Nolte. Another one of those places I was hugely uncomfortable. There were two directors, and I just felt like, oh my God, I'm with these two big stars. I'm dying here. I'm dying. I'm just little Joanna from, you know, New Jersey. And here I am with these stars. What am I doing here? I was dying. And so every time I would do scenes with Gene, it was fine. And he said to me after one, I remember one take that we did, we were in the room when he's telling me that he knows I've been having an affair with Nick Nolte. We literally removed ourselves. We were in another dimension. He said, did you feel that? Joanna, did you feel this is a very serious man who never got a line wrong, ever. And I said, yeah, I walked into it with you. It doesn't happen often at all. It's a rare thing. Usually it's about professionalism and having your lines down, and you walk on a set, you say your lines, you do them the best you can. It's up to the director, and you go home. You know, but we stepped into another place. It was just great. It was great.
Yeah, that kind of a transcendent experience.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even have those moments with people in life now. I mean, it was incredible.
Well, you've worked so much. I mean, you've got such an extensive career, and you've worked consistently ever since you got started. What do you credit that to? Especially in light of the opportunities you say you blew with.
Oh yeah, you know? I'm telling you, I blew.
Despite your best efforts, you've worked a lot.
It's really true. Oh my God. Oh boy.
So in some ways, that you can slap a big producer and be fine. Don't worry.
What's kept me in here? I don't know. Maybe I think it's my personality. I really do. I think it's that. I think I'm fun. You know, I think I go on a set and I'm fun. I go on a lot of sets where it's not fun.
Yeah.
You know, and nobody talks to anybody, and this was long before cell phones or anything else, and they just were, you know, I'm going back to my trailer now, and, you know, a lot of that, and I'd go, oh, come on, sit around here, let's laugh. Oh, God.
You said something the other day about the importance of having a smile, especially, you know, like keeping a smile on your face that's attractive to people in a professional sense, not just,
yes, you know. Yes. Which is leading back to our union. You know, we should be having more fun.
Yes.
You know, as we're sitting around in these meetings, and
yes,
and if these two sides here were really co-joined like we should be, our president would be laughing with us. She would respect us enough to have some fun. As it is, she's holding so tight to her power that it's creating this wreck of a nervousness, and I feel it. I feel it. It shuts down everything. I mean, it really does. It shuts down creativity. It shuts down rocketing movement. It's back to that, well, should we be scared of our, leaders? No. In this particular instance, no. We should not have any fear at all, and know that she can step off the stage and put her arms around us and go, we're going to make this. We're going to cut a good deal here. We're going to get it happening.
That's what leadership is.
That's what leadership is. It's not sitting in a chair and holding it all together.
Where did
and all
that come from? Because you've been here for a couple of decades. I've been around for 3-4 years. So where did that come from? Why is it that way? Is it just merger? Is it just the fractures over merger?
I think that's a big part of it.
I mean, like,
when Roberta
by merging, we've destroyed ourselves.
Well, in many ways. I found out something the other day that I did when Roberta Reardon, I can say that my tongue is twisting today, was head of AFTRA. I didn't know it was about to go bankrupt. I didn't know that. I fought her tooth and nail. I stood up at one meeting and I chewed her up. And didn't matter. It didn't matter because they were the heads, they were the leaders. How can you have leaders that don't use the rest of us? I mean, yes, I'm a celebrity, but I'm also smart. And I pay attention. I get things done. And I can do things. I'm not asked to.
Yeah, there's this remarkable lack of utilization of the resources that have stepped forward to volunteer. You're not getting paid for any of this. And for those listening who still aren't aware of this, no member leaders get paid. Only the staff gets paid. Anybody who's on the board, on national, local, whatever, we're all doing this as volunteers, which begs the question, why not figure out what everyone's strengths and weaknesses are and utilize their best qualities.
Absolutely.
And utilize others in other areas. And just because you ran on a different pamphlet with a different collection of faces, it feels like you are treated like you don't exist.
Absolutely.
And that is if you behave that way on a set, you'd be fired so fast.
So fast, you'd be out of there.
Yeah.
Because everybody on a set breaks up into cliques. I mean, it just happens like that. It's okay. That's all right. Their chemistry is absolutely, yes, and you do. And that's how we should be operating within this union.
Yeah, we've just been, it's amazing because I tell people, the way I got involved in any of this union leadership stuff was just being a teacher in the conservatory. Just a volunteer teacher in the conservatory. So the first year and a half of my engagement was having fun, telling stories with our members. Like, that was it, educating our members, spending time with them, getting to know the ropes. And so my whole experience as a volunteer was based around community, friendship, fun, education, creating art, telling stories, all that. Then I step into the boardroom and I see that there are people in leadership who don't get to have any fun with our members. They're only in leadership positions. They're only on committees, only on boards, and they don't actually have face-to-face
They don't interact at all. No. And who's on the planes? The high staff and the president. They're on the plane. I should be on that plane. I would make people laugh. We could have some fun. No, it's very wrong.
Yeah, it seems like. And this is something that you just know from being in touch with staff and everybody, that politics has completely permeated every aspect of this thing. We've forgotten ourselves. We're artists. We're supposed to be present with each other, listening. What do they say? The best actors are generous because they give their attention and they make the other people look good.
Better and better and better. Everybody gets better. That's how it should operate. That's what I'm saying. Certain actors have your back. It's not right when they don't. This is not a one-man game here. This is a group of people that have to get along, and they don't have to necessarily agree, but they have to get along.
Yeah. So you were part of the boards before we had the merger. Can you describe what SAG was like versus what SAG-AFTRA is like? Because a lot of people don't even know what SAG was like because they weren't members then, right? It's been 8 years since the merger officially. Mm-hmm. What was the difference between SAG and what SAG-AFTRA is today?
SAG was rich. I mean, in many, many different ways. AFTRA mostly was television and broadcasters and that. SAG was feature films. Well, I don't know where. Honestly, you'd have to have somebody in here really describe the defining lines between the two. But AFTRA was more. Really, it really was about, announcers, newscasters.
Daytime.
Yes. And SAG was feature films. That's what it was.
And the major TV shows. And
stuff. By my describing it as rich, I mean, it had depth. We had communication. We had power. We had a lot of power. Mm-hmm. Because you can't do stuff without us. Our little faces show up there and tell the story. We're the conduits to, imbibe these storylines that writers and producers want to tell. We're the tellers of the tale. And we had things that made us feel good. We traveled well. We would get driving money. You drove to a set. And you have to take an hour in the morning to drive to a set at 4 o'clock in the morning to get there to have your makeup put on for an hour and a half. That's a lot. Mm-hmm. We don't get that now. When SAG and AFTRA merged, we lost so much. First class plane tickets. I'm sorry. That means a lot. If you're flying to New Zealand or, London or something like that, you need space. You need to sit there and be able to have...
Performers use that time to prepare as well.
That's right. Mm-hmm. That's right. We're very key to this business, and that's the difference that I feel that's what has happened. We've lost our power.
Can you describe what the relationship was like with DGA and WGA as well? Like from when you first got started in leadership and today, is the relationship the same, or did we interact differently with our sister unions?
That's not a question for me. I can't answer that.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's an answer right there, is that whatever there wasn't significant enough for it to show up in your experience.
Yeah, and I think that we should be working together.
Amen. And I've talked to the board members of different guilds and unions, and including IATSE and Teamsters. Mm-hmm. They want to. Okay, so this leads me to another thing. There used to be something called the Inter-Guild Council, where you used to have leaders from all of the unions sit together and talk, and that hasn't been happening for something like 16 years.
15 years. Mm-hmm.
So, and the other thing that is also
See, that's very alien. I mean, seriously alien. I'm talking about all the ships coming in, and, we're guiding a mothership here. It's the business. We are the film business, as well as the directors and the writers. We are it. Mm-hmm. So why not get on another ship and talk about it?
Makes no sense that isn't happening.
I know.
So it's part of one of my, I won't say passions. There's a lot of things I'm passionate about, but I'm very interested in restoring communication between the sister guilds and associations, including the CSA and the CCDA, which is the casting directors.
Well, I think that could be done.
Oh, absolutely. The question is, it used to be something that was officially done through the LA County Fed, and now I think we're going to have to rebuild it from like member leaders and then set the table for it to become an official thing eventually. Mm-hmm. But the other thing that, since you've been part of that high profile world, the other question that so many members have, that I have, that I'm still trying to address, and that I hope I can make a difference in, and that is attracting some of our most accomplished performers and powerful performers back into leading this union. Because SAG was founded by the stars of the day. Mm-hmm. It's why we don't get paid, because they didn't want to drain the resources of the guild by taking a salary and things like that, right? Mm-hmm. So we really need the people who are the most powerful, the ones that are the most, let's say, invincible to retaliation by the production community, to be the faces of the ones sitting across the table and negotiating for our value.
I agree.
Wow, where did that go? Where did all those people go? How did that change?
I think that the and because we are divided, I think our side, who would have reached for that, has been so suppressed that I think we've just lost our motivation. I think it has a lot to do with that. I really do.
Wow, just resignation from years of defeat.
Yeah. Yeah. Well put. Well put.
And also what I've heard is that, because of the, I'm going to use a tough word here, I'll say gross political culture in our leadership, that who wants to be a part of that? Who wants to, I've heard that drives people away because they don't want to sit in the boardroom and deal with that.
No. That's right. I'm stuck on my tongue is not working now.
But I know because you've also felt that way, that it's like, if it feels like all you're doing is beating your head against the wall and being ignored and being disrespected. I mean, you go out there in the world and you have all this respect as a performer, then you step in your own union and you're treated like you don't matter.
That's not good.
No, it's
not good at all.
Well, so let me ask you about this, because you've been very kind about, some of the things that I've written to try to communicate what's happening in our union. I know recently when I put out that update for members about, what's been happening since the crisis began, I just wanted to make sure that we could talk about, was there anything in that letter that you read that you thought I mischaracterized or that I got wrong?
No, it was right on. Everything you wrote was absolutely dead on. And I still want some performers to get together and record it and get it out there. I mean, at this point, we have nothing to lose and everything to gain. I don't like being a loser. I don't do well with that. And
in losing in what sense?
Well, losing...
Because, you're elected every time you serve in leadership. So in what sense do you feel? You mean losing, like not being able to affect the strategy of our union?
Yeah. Absolutely. Listen, the people that work at SAG, I don't know who's working there now, but the workers, they work hard. I think it could be a happier place. When I've gone in there, it's...
No, the morale is very low.
It's very low, yeah.
Well, it's hard to show up every day knowing that your job is to serve the members and then see the leadership do things that seem to not be in that vein, I was talking to Pete about this when I had him here a week ago or something, but it's like, how is it that we've spent so much money? I mean, I spend thousands of dollars a year in my dues, I'm sure you do too and have. And so, it isn't just the $3,000 initiation. It's like I've paid way more since in my dues to be part of this union and to be contributing so much to this organization and to see it being a shadow of what it could be. But
you see, I think, and here's another thing that I've thought about, is that some of the very, very big actors who work all the time, Nicole Kidmans and in that group, I think they could be paying more dues. I honestly do. I think when things started to get out of proportion, when you could be a guest on a show and you could command your own price. I mean, I remember the day men got much more than women did. It was wild, but you still could ask for something that was respectful and decent. That has now gone the way.
It's all scale.
It's all scale. It's all scale.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that is just not cool.
Yeah, I was talking to Alan Rosenberg, and he said, because I was fortunate to do a top of show guest on a show called NCIS a couple of years ago, and he said, and he asked me how much I earned for that, and it was somewhere around $9,000 or something like that. And he's like, don't forget, what that's called is major role minimum. Calling it a top of show guest sounds all fancy, but he said you used to get 40, 50 grand an episode for something like that. And now you're lucky to get 9 and you're supposed to be happy about that. And, and
it's a lot of work. You prepare, you put it in, you get a look going. I always find my own clothes. I don't let anybody dress me. It's my stuff. It's my body. And then you go on the set and you just sit around and you wait and you didn't do your lines and you put everything that you have in there and it's indecent pay. That's wrong.
Yeah, and that's even top of show guests. You go down to just a day player scale or something. It's like if you're lucky in a year, you book, half a dozen shows or something. So if you can't even make a living doing that.
Right. Right.
You know.
Yeah, that's pretty tacky when you consider the money that producers are making and studios are making. Huge money. Beyond huge. They're set for life. Usually when they were about 35 or 40.
Yeah.
They're set.
In other words, the industry is incredibly profitable.
Yes.
Yeah. It's just not shared with everybody else.
It's not shared.
Yeah. And what, like you said, the dues, the dues caps, those haven't been raised in many, many, many years. So, you know, it's very disruptive to now try to make a big correction when if we had been doing it slowly over time, you know, it would
And why weren't we?
Yeah.
Why weren't we doing that? We've been suppressed.
Were people more engaged when it was SAG? Was it?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So now it's kind of diluted the interest. Yeah.
It has. It's brought us down. And I remember at the time, they kept touting us and saying, oh, it's going to be amazing for the union.
It could be.
Joining up and, you know.
I mean, it could be. I mean, I sit and I had this conversation with David White and others. It's like with the right leadership, it could be amazing. Because I've sat over the last few months and I've talked with dancers, I've talked with stunt performers, I've talked with singers and recording artists and background performers and voiceover performers. And I've talked with members of locals all across this country, and they're lovely people, and and we interact with them on sets, and we work with them and all that, and I do feel a kinship with them. But when we're led in such a siloed off fashion where we don't talk to each other and we don't communicate, we don't have an
just at
understanding
those
for each other.
meetings.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, people don't know who I am. It's probably the first time I've really talked about myself, you know, a lot, and said things that I don't often get to say. I mean, I don't, you know, I'm sure they go, oh, geez, look at her. She's tall, you know, imposing, whatever people think. I don't know. I don't know. But it's hard when you're coming together like that, especially when the mood is set up the way it is, because there's already a mood in place. It just... And people take sides, you know. It's like right before some terrible breakdown. You know, when we had the riots, it just sometimes it feels like it's getting that close, and that's an awful feeling to have. Awful. I like to like people. That's what I always look for, something in someone to really glom onto that I can have fun with and really like. Well, I have a hard time doing that. And that's not, and I think I'm not different than most people. I don't know what Pete said. I didn't hear your interview with him, but
what he said is that we don't necessarily, you know, we're not being critical of them. We're being critical of the actions taken by our brothers and sisters.
It can't ever be them.
Yeah.
We can't do that to people in this world. We can't attack people. It's their behavior is what it is.
Right.
That's what we attack.
And that's one of the things that I think has been short-sighted about the leadership that I've seen is, you know, not only not utilizing people for their strengths, but also we're all here anyway for our lives. You can't kick somebody out of the union just because you don't want to work with them. If they're duly elected, if they're there in a position, like, you know, they're part of this. Like, so even if you don't like somebody's personality or there's something about them that's a little off-putting, look for the thing that's positive, because you have to deal with them anyway. You can't choose who you're going to be on set with. You can't choose who you're going to be serving with in leadership, but you have to find a way to make it work. And there are things to love about every one of these people.
There are.
I agree. It is hard to see that positive side when the only thing you see is cold, you know, exclusionary behavior.
Yep. It is. It's deeply psychological. I know that it's very funny. Over the years, I've worked with some people who belong to an organization where the rule is there, you don't look at anybody in the eye. And you use that as a power, as a key to control other people. In fact, I worked with one actor who shall remain unnamed, who use that. She would ignore me, not say hello, didn't give me anything of herself. I know that's a technique sometimes. And it was difficult. It was really difficult to find that sweet spot in someone that you want to relate to. Mm-hmm. And that's all we want to do is relate. I think that's what we should be doing with our leadership. Or we walk away. What am I doing here? If someone is taking all the position and all the power and saying, you don't matter, get out of here.
Well, so then let's be clear. So if you were to describe to our members right now, like, can you just describe to them what the state of the union is right now? How would you describe it if somebody said, what's going on with our union right now? What's going on with our leadership? What are they doing? What would you say?
I want to say something really positive. I really do, because that's where I live. Mm-hmm. I don't know that I want to go here. I can't.
So then what would you feel comfortable saying to a member who asked
this
you?
is what I would say that would make me comfortable, is that we need our union. We do. We have to fight for our rights. And because they belong to us. I've given my life to this. I've been in the business. I don't even want to tell you. It's been a long-ass time. And this is what I do. I do other things. I do houses and I do some photography, but it's not enough. This is my heart. This is what I eat. And it can't fall out from me now. I can't have that. And I also want to see the future for actors, that they can come through and devote their lives to this. Because going back to, again, we're the storytellers. But we need that backup, because we're fighting huge conglomerates out here. Not fighting, but they're the ones that are using us as puppets. We just want to be treated well. Mm-hmm. And so we need that leadership in there to do that and to fight for us.
What would you say to other high-profile members that might see this who aren't yet engaged in leadership in this union?
Well, I would say get involved. Get involved. You have to. You've had a good life. It's only fair to pass it on and care about others. That's what we do as I'm going to call myself an elder now, which I don't really want to, but, but
maybe when you get to your 90s.
Yeah, okay. But anyway, it's my job now. This is I came on your teaching class, and I talked to some of the actors. That's my job now. Mentoring is what we need. I didn't have one when I came down here. I can remember reading Alan Arkin's book that so impressed me. He had a mentor that was brilliant with him and got him through all the vagaries of the failure and the possible failure and maybe the wins and maybe the losses, all those things. And that's our job now. So you can't just take the money and run. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that's what I feel a lot of the actors that we're talking about, that's what they do. Because they made it big. They don't care about the union, a lot of them. I wish that were different, but...
Well, and part of it, too, is that there's a lot of our members right now, like we said, the union just isn't part of their daily life. If you're part of different unions, then you go to your union hall. You go to your church, you go to your union hall, you go home and eat with the family, go to work, but it's like part of your life.
That's what it should become, as a church. Yeah.
And so we don't have that same culture. But for those people where the union's not part of their life, they may book a big job, and then their business managers or their people take care of all their union dues and this and that. And they become part of this higher profile class of our membership, but they never really were engaged or knew much about the union.
And that's really why, I mean, I have to take back that earlier statement. They do care. I mean, it's what's paying them, paying for their health. But you're right. Somebody else pays the bills. And so
they just don't know.
They don't know.
You know?
They don't know. They don't know. You don't think about that a lot when you're fighting your way up. You don't have time to. You know, if you've got a family, if you have kids and you're trying to keep a roof over your head, you don't have time to think about that. But you need to know it's there.
Well, you know, and I think I'm going to make this statement. I haven't made a statement like this before, but I'm going to posit this. Because as an educator, one of the things that I see most frequently amongst performers, and at this point I've educated thousands of our LA members, you know, in classes and things, is them, you know, trying to do everything alone, rehearsing alone, you know, pursuing this industry alone. It's very lonely. And they feel afraid to ask others for help, to help them rehearse, to put them on tape, to run lines, whatever it is. And I keep trying to figure out where that came from, because once you're on a show with somebody, they will do everything they can. We do everything for each other to make the show work, whether it's a play, whether it's a TV series, whatever you need, man, I'm here for you. So there's something that has made us feel disconnected from each other prior.
This has separated us. That's what I feel is the big deal, this money thing. That it's gotten away from the creative side of it, except to make huge money. And so it's, listen, I was there. I saw it all. I saw the sweetness on the set. Nobody was looking at their watch and going, hey, we got to get this shot before blah, blah, blah. If you wanted to take your time, you could take your time. Get into character. But no, what we have today are life coaches. And maybe that's the same thing as a mentor. I mean, and there are lots of people out there who you pay them. You know, you pay them and they get you through the bad spots.
Well, we've talked about doing some kind of apprenticeship type of thing through the union so that new members coming in can have somebody who's been working guide them and be available to them to kind of sponsor them in a way and make sure that they're taken care of. I think if people were more involved in SAG-AFTRA as a union and cared for this thing, we would feel differently in our relationship with each other outside of just, you know, the union operations. Like, we would rely on each other more for self-taping, help, and rehearsal. We would feel more like a community. Well, I don't know. It's big now. It's very big. 162,000 members.
Yeah. I mean, when I came in, it was a small city. Really, it's a huge difference. I don't know.
Well, you said, just switching, you know, gears for a second, you said something the other day about how, and you just said this during our talk right now, that it used to be all about beauty. But then you said the other day that it feels like the industry has become much more inclusive of all different types, shapes, sizes, that kind of thing. So we are making some progress.
Oh, we're totally making progress, yes.
Totally. And the stories can be more realistic then, because it's more reflective of life as a real.
No, in the day, movies were to take you out of that. Nobody looked like anybody. Are you kidding me? I mean, before they got sat in the makeup chair, nobody looked like them, you know, themselves up on screen. It's different deal today. No makeup. No makeup.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah, before it's get me away from real life.
Exactly.
And
now it's no. But let's see what real life is. Let's shove it in your face. Let's shove all this terrible time. Oh boy, every spot,
What's one of your favorite films?
I really liked The Way Under Fire came out. I've done a lot of small films that you'll never see because some of them went straight to
But I mean, is there one that you're particularly proud of that you just...
I loved Under Fire. That was really... That's a fantastic film, and everything in it is fantastic. And it was so tough to make. We were in Mexico. We had our film stolen. It was,
wow.
You know, there were moods. The Mexican government hated us. You know, they brought the army on to use them as background, their rifles had real ammunition in it. And Gene Hackman was going, I'm not working on this thing. And he left. He drove off in a huff. Oh, my God. I've just seen so much crazy stuff go on. God. Seen actors thrown in jail. I mean, it has been wild. It has been really wild. All part of the visual, all part of my life.
What are you watching these days? What's some of your favorite shows?
Oh, I'm watching a lot of Finnish series. There's one called Border Town right now. Which is fabulous. I have not seen such beautiful acting. It's seamless. And these people, the police people, oh my God, their families are, it's just gorgeous. There's a lot of affection, caring, seeing the lead is a strange-looking bird-like man, long arms, long legs, and he has a wicked mind. He's got this crazy mind that he stands in a room and makes squares and puts his feet on papers. It's just so bizarre, but it's wonderful. And then there was another Finnish show that I watched, a series called The Adulterers. That was on for 3 years. That was amazing. And then there was another one I just watched. I can't remember the name of it. A lot of foreign things these days. Of course, I watched Ozark, which I love.
Oh, that performance of the guy who played, I think his name was Ben in,
Yes.
Laura Linney's brother. I mean, I haven't cried in a TV series in a long time, but I
know.
cried for
Wasn't
him.
that something?
Yeah.
Janet McTeer, brilliant in the show. Brilliant. She's as tall as a dinosaur. She's a huge woman, and she's and she ate that part up. I just went, wow. She's a wow. It's amazing.
So another kind of fun question. You've told a lot of different stories over the course of your career. What's a story you still have yet to tell that you really want to tell? Like if you could have the dream role right now, what would it be?
Oh, I'd probably want to play like a, I would probably want to play like a, we walked in here, you said I look like a cyborg. I don't know, I think I seem...
The reason for anybody listening is because Joanna has a boot on her foot, that's why. And
Right.
It looks very intense.
I don't know whether I belong in that sci-fi genre or not. I think...
This is what you want. Who cares whether you belong? What do you want?
What do I want? I want to play a queen. I want to play a queen. I think I've...
Future or past? Like, or present?
Not present. Because I think that men are... women are morphed into men in the present. There's not a lot of softness. I think queens can be very strong but very soft at the same time. I'll tell you who's really good at that, who's in our union, who works with us. Frances Fisher is beautiful. She embodies that. I don't know. I think I should play something really funny, and I don't know whether I can define it as a particular type character or not. The fun thing is what I win awards with. That's what I've always been, What do you think?
Me cast you if I was to cast you
Yes,
in
if you were
something?
casting me in something, would I put you on the spot?
Oh, wow. Yeah. I mean, I think it would be, just from the conversations that we've had so far, I think it would be really fun for you to be, Aaron Brockovich isn't the right, story, but something where you get to be a crusader in for something.
Yes. Yes, the Crusader is right up my alley. It really is. Very Robin Hoody.
Like just
and
to take on the power.
Yeah. No, I think that's very right. I've imagined that over the years.
And I think that even our conversation today, as people listen to this, you have been in the
This is live?
No. When it goes out, when people listen to this. But, that there is a softness to you, but such a strength. So I think that was a cool thing you just said about you said something along the lines of women in power today are kind of emasculated, as opposed to you can be feminine and still be strong.
Feminine wiles, they called them. That's very much to me. It's like the women in the South. Yo, now, y'all have a good day. You gonna come back? You gonna come back and join our group? Are you really, honey? Those are feminine wiles, and trust me, they get their way. That's how it works.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else you'd like to share with anybody listening? How can people support you right now? What is it that they can do to support you? Like follow you on social media or
yes,
watch
that would be terrific. I just put out today. You and I helped me put up a laugh thing because Goldie Hawn challenged anyone to make people laugh with a laugh. So I put it up, and yes, to be supported on that would be really great.
All right. Anything else?
Instagram and Facebook.
Well, tomorrow night we actually have, not that this recording is going to come out in time, but tomorrow night we're going to have a town hall meeting where members can share with us what they're thinking and feeling. And I'm anticipating just really listening.
Me too. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let them vent. Let them say what they're not getting and what they are getting.
Well, thank you so much, Joanna, for this time, and I hope it's the first of many. And thanks to anybody listening to this. I hope you found it useful.
Yeah.